Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast, episode 49. Closing in on the 5-0 here. It's Monday, Labor Day. Happy Labor Day, everybody. It's about a little after 5 o'clock Eastern time. So football is back, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, they're playing real games. We have real stuff to talk about, not just speculation. So, yeah.
Yep, real college football games. You know, we had week 1, although it's really kind of week 2. I'm not sure how they're doing that. Last week was week 0 somehow. I don't know how that works, but we had some exciting college football this weekend, and then we got the NFL coming up starting Thursday. Buffalo against the Los Angeles Rams. It should be really exciting. So, looking forward to it. Everybody who needs content, we're going to start getting some real content for a change.
For the first time since the NBA Finals.
Yep.
So, for the first time in like 3 months. All right.
Yep. All right. So, first thing we wanted to talk about the college football games. There was, the most of them on Saturday and then, the game last night. My first takeaway is, I know this is no surprise to anybody. Georgia and Alabama still really good.
Yeah.
I know everyone's. I know no one is shocked by that. It's the most obvious thing I've ever said on this show. But they look pretty much the same.
Yeah, and the SEC still has. A lot of those teams, they just have so many good players on their teams. So that's why. I give. We can talk about Utah. I give them credit for scheduling Florida and then going to play Florida, like flying across the country. And they only lost by, I guess it was 3 points or something.
Right.
So, it sucks for them to lose, but it was a close game. But still, Florida's unranked, so I don't know how that affects Utah going. If Utah was to run the table and win the Pac-12, or can they still get in the playoff? I don't know.
Yeah, so let's talk about that game first. So that was a really I thought that was the best game of the weekend. It didn't that was really competitive. Both teams going back and forth. Utah playing a true road game, going all the way across the country to play in Gainesville, and that's really legit. And they came close to win. They had a play on the goal line at the end to win the game. Quarterback threw an interception, but both those teams are good teams, and something to watch as we go forward. Anthony Richardson, the Florida quarterback, wow, looks like he's legit. He's like 6'4", 230 pounds, and the dude can run. So he's going to be an interesting guy to watch as we go forward. Especially when we get to talking about quarterback prospects for the draft. That's going to be. He's really going to be something to watch. But that was I thought the best game of the day. Alabama played Utah State, so what are you going to say? Of course they beat them. They destroyed them, which most games this weekend were blowouts because it's most teams weren't playing.
And even that's the thing one of the things I don't like about this weekend is that they'll hype up these out of conference games, and a lot of them just are not. Georgia plays Oregon, and they totally crush them. And no offense to Oregon, but it's just like you could kind of see that happening. It's just that's kind of the way it is. And then it's like, oh, Notre Dame's playing Ohio State. And, it was close, I guess. But, at the end of the day, it's like, who's the better team? Ohio State's obviously the better team. So, yeah, it's just, I was interested to see that North Carolina played Appalachian State and barely won. And the game was like a college basketball score.
Yeah, that game, there were two incredible games going on at the same time. So North Carolina State played East Carolina, and, there's been some talk before the season, and I brought it up in our college football preview. NC State may have, the kind of team that people think have an outside shot at the playoff, if they can beat Clemson. And they really struggled in this game, and East Carolina missed an extra point and then missed a last-second field goal to win the game. Otherwise, they would have lost. So it was not a good performance by NC State, but quite an exciting game. The Appalachian State-North Carolina game was insane. So Appalachian State was up 21-7, And then North Carolina scored 34 points in a row. So they're up 41-21 going into the fourth. And Appalachian State scores 41 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. And they barely lose. They tried to first they tried to go for two to win the game with about 30 seconds left. They didn't get it. Then North Carolina, like, this is kind of funny, the minutia of college football. They kick an onside kick, right? And North Carolina returns it for a touchdown, which you're going, no, you don't want to do that. All you wanted to do was sit on the ball. They had no timeouts. So that gives Appalachian State the ball back, and they're down 8. So they go down and score with 33 seconds to go. They take the ball. No problem. We're going to score. And then they went for two, to tie the game, and they weren't able to get it. But there was just incredible back and forth. There were, I think 60-something points combined with both teams scored in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It was absolute insanity.
Well, again, that's why if you're a Division I school and you want to compete for like the championship or to get into the playoff, there's really no benefit to playing I guess it's a FCS school, football championship subdivision school.
Right.
There's really no benefit to playing those games, because if you win, well, you were supposed to win. If you lose, I mean, that's horrible. If you play a really, really close game like North Carolina played with Appalachian State, that just looks bad. People like if you're in a situation where you're analyzing their resume and you're going, well, do they have any big wins? And then you're going to be like, well, I don't know, maybe. But then you look at that and you go, well, they didn't lose that game, but they almost did. That's going to look bad for the whole season. So.
Yeah, and they went to Appalachian State to play them, so they played them on their field. Which I give North Carolina credit; they pulled it off somehow. But there was no defense in that game, the entire game. That was a pinball machine.
I mean, and by the way, like I said, if you're a Division I school, scheduling that game does you no benefit. But for the FCS school, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, at Appalachian State, they're probably going to be talking about that all year long. We almost beat North Carolina.
And Appalachian State is known for beating some of these teams. Famously, they beat Michigan years ago, and so they're a dangerous team. I thought what Georgia did was really impressive to play Oregon. I know they played them in Atlanta, but it was a neutral site game. They played Oregon and just absolutely wiped the floor with them. Georgia's up front, their offensive and defensive lines are just sickening. Like they had, Oregon had no chance. But what I liked about Georgia was they really opened up the offense. Like last year, Georgia really didn't have to score against most teams, so they just were running the ball. This game, it was the quarterback throwing, making plays. They were swinging for the fences. So I think, Georgia's not quite as good on defense, but I think they're going to be better on offense. So I think it's a really exciting game. I think Georgia and Alabama both have a chance to go undefeated, but I kind of feel like, we'll see what happens. As always, there's a chance they could lose a game, here or there. You get the right team, on the right weekend, and you never know. I thought, I give Notre Dame credit for going to play Ohio State. I really thought they had no shot, going into this game, but they hung in there and they had the lead, through 3 quarters.
Right.
So, I give Notre Dame credit. They don't have much of an offense, unfortunately. They don't have a whole lot of playmakers on their team. And I don't feel like, I think for the first game, I think Ohio State was a little bit off. But, that being said, I thought, Notre Dame played well, and I thought their defense played pretty well. So Marcus Freeman, good. He gets good marks from me for his first game as a head coach. I thought, Notre Dame was up to the test. They weren't able to win. Ohio State just has so much more talent than them that it's really difficult. But speaking of crazy games, that finish last night with LSU and Florida State was just nuts. If anybody watched, it looked like Florida State had the game. They're up 2 touchdowns with about 6 minutes to go.
And you could argue they maybe should have been up more, because I just felt like they were playing better. LSU had some. Did LSU was it LSU that had penalties? No, it was Florida State that had some bad penalties that helped LSU drive down and get it within 1 touchdown after they were up 24-10. FSU was up 24-10. And it looked like the quarterback for Florida State, he made some pretty good throws. Just the receivers, they only helped him out a few times, or a few other times where if they'd have made some catches, then maybe Florida State wins, going away. And LSU just, I thought defensively they were okay, but I mean, even on the plays where I'm complaining that the FSU guys didn't make plays, I mean, the LSU defensive backs are really good and they're kind of all over the receivers. But LSU's offense just, I wasn't that impressed with the quarterback. That's one of the things I find tough with college football is it's tough to tell because so much of the offense is basically like you take the shotgun snap and it's basically like I'm throwing to this guy, or if I'm not throwing to him, I'm throwing to him, and we're going to figure this out within a second, and I'm getting rid of the ball. And if that's not there, I'm running. So it's very difficult to tell which quarterbacks are able to actually sit there and like, okay, that's not open, boom, and they beat you with the ball rather than just resorting to beating you with their feet. So
yeah, I think
kind of hung in there and made some throws.
Yeah. LSU's got some offensive line issues, obviously in that game. Yeah. You could tell in that game which team had their coach in the third year. Florida State's coach is in his third year, and which team had a brand new head coach. You could tell by the way that they played. So they have some offensive line issues to work out. I think that Jaden Daniels kid is he's a transfer from Arizona State. I think he's got some talent that they can use. He can throw the ball pretty well. He can move with it. He can run pretty well. So I think they've got it's a nice start for them. But they have, what takes longer with these schools, especially when somebody takes over with recruiting, is getting better up front. You can get skill position people. It's getting the offensive and defensive lines and getting that all figured out. So I think LSU is going to get better as the season goes along. I think it's Florida State is so much better than they were a couple years ago. So that's really impressive.
Well, take me through the timeline here because I'm trying to remember this. Jimbo Fisher leaves for Texas A&M. They hired another coach, and then he was there for like a year or two?
Yeah, I think so.
And then they hired this guy?
And they hired Mike Norvell, and this is his third season there. So
because that was kind of, it's one of those things where like especially with like Florida and Florida State, if they're bad, you kind of go, what the hell's going on? Because Florida, there's so many good high school football players here. It's like, I'm not saying that they should be trying to win the national championship every year, but if they're bad, like something's wrong you're not doing a good enough job recruiting, like something's wrong because you should be able to, as a state-funded school, you should be able to. University of Miami, they're private, and obviously there's some head coaching things and whatever, but like state schools like that, you should be good. You should be getting a lot of good players every year. So yeah, something was up.
Yeah, and you could see, by the way, University of Florida has a new head coach too, and you can see Florida still has a pretty good amount of talent, even though they didn't look great last year. You can see they got players are not the issue, and so I feel like it sucks to lose your first game, but I feel like LSU showed themselves pretty well, and I think Florida State's got a nice thing going. But, crazy finish. Florida State fumbles the ball on the goal line. LSU has to go 98 yards in a minute and a half with no timeouts. They pull that off. They get the touchdown, and then the extra point gets blocked.
Well, let's just go through all the issues in that game. So LSU, they get I think they had like one player who got injured like early in the game, or maybe two. I can't remember. They had like a couple injuries. They had the same guy fumbled 2 punts.
Right.
Okay. They had a targeting penalty, so a guy got kicked out of the game. Florida State then had a couple like pass interference calls, I think, that helped LSU get down the field and score a touchdown. Florida State fumbles the ball at the goal line. LSU gets a field goal blocked.
Right.
Did they get the extra point blocked, or did they just?
Yes.
Or did LSU just miss? Okay.
No, it was blocked.
So they blocked a field goal and they blocked an extra point. So yeah, that's it was a pretty crazy game.
Which, to me, it's understandable in the first week of college football, the special teams are going to be bad because
and you don't get any preseason games like the NFL.
Well, and you only get so much practice time. Like they're not work, special teams is not going to be worked on as much as the other things are. So It doesn't surprise me that this weekend we saw a mess of special teams. I mentioned East Carolina missing an extra point and a field goal. Those kind of things happen, but really exciting first weekend. And, but that being said, the disappointing part is there really is only one game next weekend that's actually worth watching, right? Alabama's playing Texas. I mean, they're favored by 20. I mean, Alabama's going to destroy them. That's not even going to be a contest. But Kentucky's playing Florida. That's it. Those are the only, and I think those are the only two games where both teams are ranked. The rest of it is a ranked team against an unranked team. So this is one of the issues with college football that, we need to get fixed. As we start with this kickoff and they put all these, the handful of good games to start the season, and then we get 2 or 3 weeks until October. We don't start getting big time matchups until October. Like it's really kind of a pain in the ass. It makes it really difficult, if you're a fan of the sport to really enjoy it. But
yeah. Well, the other thing is, okay, and we've talked about this before. I talked about this last year. I mean, first of all, last night's game took way too long, and it didn't even go into overtime. I mean, guys, the first half should be over in like an hour and a half. And it was kind of close to that, but then it's just like after 3 hours, we hit about the 3-hour mark, and there was still almost the whole fourth quarter to go. And I'm just like, guys, what the hell are you guys doing? Like,
these games
take this long.
These games take 4 hours now, and it's
what
really,
the hell's going on here?
It's really painful to be a TV watcher. And there was an article in the New York Times, somebody basically saying, why does watching college football have to be so painful? And he wasn't saying the games aren't good. He was basically saying the commercials and the constant, we've got to make our money off of this. It's just it just sucks it drains the life out of the TV product. First of all, the college football halftime is 20 minutes. In the NFL, it's only 12. Okay,
yeah.
And they stop the clock after first downs. Now when the referee spots the ball and blows a whistle, the clock starts again. But when you add that up over a 60-minute game, you're now making the game take longer. So it's really. Well,
then the thing is that, like, I'm not necessarily saying I don't like the overtime, but then when you add that up to how long it takes to do a regulation game, and then you go into overtime, you could have 3 or 4 overtimes. You could be adding another 45 minutes. I mean, this is just, this is definitely something that they have to. Well, I mean, they're making so much money, they're probably not going to address it, but it's ridiculous. I mean, these games are taking way too long.
Yeah, they can figure this out. The NFL manages to fit their games into 3-hour and 15-minute windows. So I don't know why it can be done, right? We can see it. We clearly can see it in another, with the NFL versus college. Like, they can do this better. And if you watch an NFL game, it's much more efficiently done. The way they do the commercials it's just much more efficient. So it's kind of interesting. I would like to see if somebody did a study on, how the games are broadcast, college versus the NFL, and why it's so much longer, because it's insanity. Like this, you honestly, it's getting to be like the NBA. Like, don't bother turning the game on until you're 3.5 hours in, just so you can see what happens at the end, because all the rest of it is just, it's kind of nonsense. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But
real quick, I wanted to point something out while we were talking here, and this is for the people listening or watching. If you don't live in Florida, you have to understand that Florida is a little bit different, especially South Florida. So we're doing this, and I get a text from my wife, a text that she got from her uncle. He, I guess, goes alligator hunting every once in a while. So she texts me a picture.
Don't we all?
Yeah. He's got an alligator, and he's like holding the mouth open. I think it's at that point, I think it was dead or whatever, but
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to break down alligator hunting in the next segment.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, if people are ever like, man, Florida's different, it definitely is, because every now and then you get a text like that, just saying.
Yeah, so but the other, the major college football news is it came out that I think the board of directors or the board of managers for the college football playoff unanimously voted to expand the playoff to 12 teams by 2026. And they strongly urged the commissioners, which is the 10 conference commissioners and the president of Notre Dame, or the Notre Dame athletic director, to try to move this up to 2024. And all I can say is, I mean, come on, college football. Like, you could have done this a year ago. Like, I don't understand what is so difficult about this, right? They were talking about expanding the playoff before last season started. They had 3 meetings about it. That's it. Just 3 meetings, and didn't do anything. And now all of a sudden, the story comes out that, oh, well, they left $450 million on the table. Well, we got to expand it now. It's it's just, if you've been a college football fan for a long time like we have, this is 30 years of us going, why don't you just do this? It'll be great. It'll make more money. It'll be good for everybody. What's so hard about this? And it moves like a glacier. It's just come on, folks. And then they're just, well, there's going to be a lot of logistical issues to move it up to 2024. Really? You can't work this out? Come on. This is a multi-billion-dollar organization. You guys can't figure out how to, book hotel rooms and schedule sites and whatever? Really? We're still in 2022, right?
Yeah.
So we literally have over 2 years to work this out. You guys can't do it? It's just...
Maybe they'll figure it out. But, it is pretty ridiculous that they're I don't know if we can figure this out.
It's just really frustrating. It's but the TV contracts, because ESPN won't give you more money if you give them more games?
Right.
You can't work that out either? Come on. Don't give me this nonsense about contracts get broken all the time, especially when the amount of money that we're talking about here. So, and it's just, it blows my mind. Yes, I should be happy about it. I am happy. Good. I think the 12 team, and the format is great. I like the 12 teams. It's the best 6 conference champions get automatic buys. So that means that whoever the highest ranked group of 5 teams, so outside of the Power 5, is going to get in. So we won't have to hear anybody bitching about Cincinnati anymore, because you're going to get in. Whoever the highest ranked conference champion from the whatever, they're going to get in. And, let's face it, there's going to be 4 or 5 SEC teams. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 Big Ten teams. There'll be a couple ACC, somebody from the Pac-12, somebody from the Big 12, and, it's going to be, I also really like the idea that the first round games are on campus. They're not bowl games. So there's the top 4 teams will get buys, and then those other 8 teams will play on campus games. And then the quarterfinal will be on campus games. And then the semifinals and the championship will be bowl games. So I think it's fantastic, but it's just ridiculous that it's going to take us so long to get to it. I don't see why this is so difficult to figure out now. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Overall, I'm happy about it, but it's one of those things that's frustrating. It's come on, college football, get with the program.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to necessarily go off on a tangent, but I think with every change that you make, there's pros and cons, right?
Right.
And so, look, we moved to a 14 playoff. That has consequences, good and bad, and then we're going to end up moving to a 12-team playoff. That has consequences, both good and bad. I think the postseason becomes more interesting, and there's definitely a better possibility that we're going to get better postseason games because, let's be honest, with the college football playoff, outside of some of the championship games, a lot of these semifinal games have been atrocious. They've just been horrible. They've been blowouts. So more games, I think, and you'll get more matchups that you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting to see. So I think that's good. Obviously the money, I guess you're, in a way you could say you're giving more teams an opportunity to win it, although I still think that there's only about 3, maybe 4 teams a year that can legitimately say that we're the best team in the sport and we can win the whole
But I think you gotta make college football an event. That's what it is. College football is an event. Forget the champion. That's a whole, to me, that's where I feel like we've gone way too far now. We're focused on who wins the title. Who cares about that? Get more good games. Make more events. And the good part is, the way they were talking about scheduling it was, we're basically going to have, once the conference championship games end, we're going to have college football within 2 weeks.
Right.
So we're not going to have to wait.
That was one of the biggest problems before.
Right. We're not going to have to wait an entire month. So yeah, you're right. There are pros and cons, right? The 4-team playoff, it kind of, basically it screws up some bowl games, kind of makes them less important, which I know that's important to lots of people, right? It's changed the way that works, and now everybody's focused on, can you get in the playoffs? So it's affected recruiting, right? Because they're only going to go, all the kids are going to try to go to those schools to get in the playoffs.
The one thing the one criticism of this that I agree with, and it just, I don't know, it is what it is. is, and Kirk Herbstreit was talking about this on College Game Day. The games at the end of the regular season that used to carry such significance because the loser was basically out, like Ohio State playing Michigan, or the Big Ten championship game, or the Big 12 championship game, or whatever the case is. Some of those games are not going to matter as much, depending on how both teams come into, like, if Ohio State and Michigan come into their game undefeated, they're both undefeated, then the loser is still probably going to get in.
Yeah, last year they both were going to get in. I mean, I'm sorry, if you took last year as an example and there was a 12-team playoff, they both would have gotten in regardless of who won that game.
So, now again, there's so much tradition and so much history, and there's so many, like, graduates of these schools. So I'm not saying the game's not going to matter at all anymore. No, it's still going to matter.
We're going to watch.
Yeah, we're going to watch because of the tradition, but the consequences behind the game aren't going to be the same as they were. Again, it depends on the situation. Sometimes it may be the case that you lose, you're out, depending on how you come into some of these different games.
Yeah, the Big Ten and the SEC conference championship games now are basically going to be for seeding. Basically, that game's going to be, if you win, you get a bye.
Yeah, and so there is kind of a thing now where you're some of these games you may be more watching them for, well, if these teams play each other again, then this is what it was like the first time they played, and now we got to have a better understanding of the matchup. Kind of like in the NFL when, like, you see, two teams play each other, and then you're like, well, if they meet in the postseason, then we'll look back on this one, and there'll be some things that we discuss based on what we saw the last time they played each other. So, again, it's not that college football is not going to keep being popular, and we are going to get more good games. But, that when you make a change like this, there's going to be some things that are going to be different. I don't think there's any way to dispute that. And people could talk about if they think it's good or bad. I can see both sides of it. But, I guess overall I think it's good. They do need to, hopefully this leads to not just we have a good postseason, but also, less fear about losing a game and having it completely eliminate you, and then we can get better out-of-conference games and not some of the crap that we get now in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the college football regular season.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if schools are gonna change the way they schedule. I hope they do. But yeah, and look at last year as an example, right? Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. Didn't really matter. They were both going to the playoff anyway. So that thing happens even with a 4-team playoff.
That's true.
We still get stuck with that. I do like the idea of being more inclusive. Let's get a Pac-12 team in there. Let's get a Big 12 team.
That's definitely important because they've just been, we can't just have the Pac-12. Like, you've got to be able to pull in different parts of the country, and it can't just be the South. So.
Yeah. So I think overall it's good. I mean, but how do you feel about, some people really hate, the conference realignment and, teams are, teams moving different conferences.
Do you think that this kind of slows that down a little bit? Possibly?
I don't know. I don't think it slows it down for a school like USC.
Right.
Like the major schools that make the money, they're going to go where the money is. So I don't know that changes anything for them. Right? Maybe that, if you take out the top 25, schools that make the most money, like you go past that, yeah, for them, it probably doesn't, they're probably not going to be changing as much, but they wouldn't change anyway. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'm of the philosophy, like I understand the tradition. I get that people are upset that, USC isn't going to play Oregon State anymore, but, nobody watched that game though. Like I get that, like some of the, like I think some of these traditions that they're trying to hold on to, like they're gone. They're not really there anyway. Like I don't get, all the traditions that we still value, we're still going to get. We're still going to get Michigan, Ohio State. We're still going to get, Alabama, Auburn. We're still going to get, Florida, Florida State. We're still going to get those games. So I'm of the mind, listen, I want better games. And whatever it takes to accomplish that, I don't want to watch USC play Arizona State and Oregon State and Stanford. I'd much rather they play Wisconsin and Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
You can get upset and be upset about the geography. Like, I understand people don't like it. I get it, but man, listen, if you make the product better, people will come. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. We've talked about this before. I don't want to, I understand the argument about some of the different, the tradition argument and, but at the same time, we'll just, there'll be new traditional kind of stuff. Before we had the BCS, it was just different kind of stuff. And then it's 1 versus 2. And that became a thing for, however long the BCS was there, 15 years or something. And then we get the playoff and it's okay, who's going to be one of the top 4 teams? And then it'll change to, we'll have 12 teams and then we'll kind of adjust to that. And we'll still have some of those rivalry games that'll still be a really big deal.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we didn't have. Alabama Georgia was not a rivalry before the 14 playoff. That was not. They played each other every once in a while, but that was not what it is now. What was the other one that I was going to say?
Bama Clemson.
I was going to say Texas A&M and Alabama. That wasn't a thing, and then Johnny Manziel comes along, and all of a sudden, oh boy, look at that. I feel like we're going to get new things.
Well, the other thing is, Texas A&M, they, once Texas goes back to the SEC, Texas playing Texas A&M was 100-year thing. They played every year, and then Texas A&M left the Big 12, so then they stopped doing it. But they might bring that back. So yeah, it's like we'll have old things, but then we'll replace them with something else, and then maybe some other stuff comes back. I don't know.
And some of these traditions
aren't great because one of the teams sucks.
Right. Well, and some of these traditions aren't really true anyway. Texas used to be in the Southwestern Conference. They weren't in the same conference with Oklahoma. And then Nebraska and Oklahoma were in the Big 8. And then they became in the Big 12. They got rid of the. So I think it's. I know people are all up in arms about it, but listen, man, we just want the product to be better. That's all. That's our overriding theme on this show.
Right.
All right, so let's wrap that up. NFL starting this weekend. We're gonna preview some NFL stuff, and then we're gonna give our Dolphins take. We're gonna try not to bash them too much. Sometimes we can be a little rough on our team, but our team deserves it. They've earned that reputation. So all right, so I'm just gonna roll through some questions here, and we'll react accordingly. So Jeremy's burning NFL questions.
Here we
go. All right. So, do the Philadelphia Eagles get the number 1 seed?
Where did this come from?
So, what happened is the Eagles they have the best odds to win the NFC East, and because their schedule is so easy, partly because of their division and partly because of just the way it kind of worked out.
Who else are they playing?
I'd have to look it up, but they're obviously playing their crappy division. And
right.
then, I'll pull it up here. But anyway, and then people don't believe in the Cowboys. So that's turned into a thing. So the odds are pretty decent, that Philadelphia, and plus the NFC is kind of, you can see it's not as, it's not really a legitimate division. So they feel
I'm looking at their schedule. So in addition to their own division, let's see, they're playing the Dolphins. Wait, no, that's the preseason.
They're playing the AFC South and
they're playing the Lions. They're playing the NFC North. So they got the Lions, they got the Jaguars, they got the Texans, they got Steelers. They're not that great, The Bears. Okay, I could see an argument for that. That schedule is not ridiculous, and but again, we got to remember, I don't necessarily consider Philadelphia to be a contender, but the NFC is not that great. So I guess it's not that far out of left field them getting the number 1 seed.
I just more brought that up to talk about where you think the Eagles are at. Look, I think they definitely could win their division. There's no doubt about it. I was trying to see their win total. So they're 9.5. So their over under for wins is 9.5. So you figure, I mean, there's no reason they can't win 10 games, right? I mean, if they go 5-1 or 4.
If you win 2 or 3 more, then you're in number 1 seed territory. Really?
Yeah. So it's not crazy. And listen, man, I think the Eagles just have they have a better overall roster than the Cowboys. They have a better overall roster than anybody in that division. And, listen, I don't think Jalen Hurts is an awesome quarterback. But I think that with that team
schedule, he doesn't necessarily need to be an elite quarterback in that many games.
Exactly. They have really good offensive line, really good defensive line. They got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith playing wide receiver now. Like, they have a lot of talent. So there's no reason to think they couldn't be in that conversation. When you look at the NFC, if something goes wrong with the Rams or Tampa, they could be in the conversation to get one of those.
And Tampa's got offensive line problems. Chris Godwin's not there yet. I kind of think Brady's his talent is fine, but I just wonder, I don't know, is he really, I don't really want to get into that whole thing, but I mean, I just wonder, is he going to fall off a cliff, or does it just, at this point in his career, I think he needs a lot of talent, and I don't think they have that as much as they did in the previous 2 years. So,
right. But again, their division, easily winnable.
Right.
So, so they have a good shot at it. But I do think the door is open. I wouldn't put money on it. I don't think, I don't believe in Philly that much to win 12 or 13 games. I think that's a bit of a stretch. But,
I wouldn't be totally shocked. I mean, given their schedule and I could potentially see it happening. I mean, like, they play the Dolphins. Can the Dolphins beat the Eagles? Yeah, maybe. But, I mean, the Eagles could beat the Dolphins. Like, it's not like
Okay. My next question. How good are the Denver Broncos? And just give you a little background here. This stems from my thing. This is one of the things I'm going to stand on this season. If you don't think Russell Wilson's going to be good on the Denver Broncos, then, I don't know what to tell you. Like, okay, maybe he's not the Russell Wilson from 2015. I get it. But this team's loaded. Absolutely loaded. They have talent all over the place. He's going to have a running game. They've got, pretty good wide receivers and tight ends. Like, the defense is good. Like, I don't understand these people who are doubting Russell Wilson now when he actually has a
they're a Super Bowl
around
contender. That's fine. I don't know. They got a new coach and they're trying to put it all together, this year. Maybe it happens. I don't know, but is Russell Wilson still really good? And I think if he's got a better thing going there than with Seattle, then yeah, he was winning games when he was healthy. He was winning games in Seattle when their defense was eroding and they didn't have a lot. Their offensive line wasn't that good, so. Yeah, I think they'll be fine. I see them as, a playoff team, potentially more. We'll have to see. Again, they have a brand new coach who has not been a head coach before. So,
yeah, I don't understand the doubting Russell Wilson. I don't get it. Like, there's all these other quarterbacks you can have doubts about. I don't think Russell Wilson's that. The guy's unbelievable, and he's been an MVP candidate, and like he's had some spectacular years. Okay, maybe he's not as good. I think he's 33 or 34 years old now, but I still think Russell Wilson's going to be awesome.
What do you think about John Middlecoff on his podcast was making the point that Russell Wilson put on some muscle, and that's going to slow him down in terms of running. And his theory was that Russell Wilson wants to sit in the pocket more, and it's like fine, but he is still short. So, he's a great deep ball thrower. Is he able to make all the other throws?
Yeah, when you're short, there are limitations. You have to kind of work the offense around that. But I just think they will. I just think he's smart. The coach is smart. I think they will figure out a way for him to succeed, and I think he'll be able to run well enough. He's not going to be old school the way he used to be, but I still think, I'm not. I don't have any concerns about Russell Wilson. I think he'll be just fine. So my next question is, what are the Bears doing with Justin Fields?
Oh, do they know? I don't,
Yeah, not much is my answer.
Yeah.
My first answer is not much. So I'm very concerned about what happens there. Like Chicago is one of the teams. I mean, their win total 6.5, but they're one of the teams that people are saying. You know, I was reading a Ringer article. They think the Bears might have one of the worst 2 records in the league.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, their offensive line's not that good. They're not giving Justin Fields a lot of weapons to work with. They have a defensive head coach. So. Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that's it. The Bears are one of those quarterback wastelands. The Bears, the Jets, I mean, it's tough to be a good quarterback on those teams.
Yeah, it's disturbing what's going on there. They draft this kid, they change the coach, they get a defensive coach, right? They don't pick up any wide receivers. Like they let the guy went to the Rams, I can't remember. They let him go to the Rams, and then they got Moody or whatever. He's the only receiver that they have. Like I feel like this is just going to be a disaster. Thank goodness Justin Fields can move a little bit because at least he maybe can get out of the way of some of this stuff. But there's no way I believe that they're going to have a good team. Like people have got the Lions. People think the Lions are going to be better than the Bears this year. So it's just a travesty what they're doing to Justin Fields. I guess that's the reason I brought that up.
Yeah, agreed.
Will the Patriots miss the playoffs?
There's a very good possibility of that. And I want to be clear here. The only reason that people aren't on this, that the Patriots are going to be a bad team, is because they're the Patriots. They've won 6 Super Bowls. They've appeared in 9 Super Bowls over the last 20 years. And Belichick's regarded by a lot of people as the best coach in the history of the league. Okay? But look, they don't have a lot of talent on offense. Mac Jones is not someone who can carry a bad team. He needs a really good team around him. They don't have the same offensive line coach. They've got defensive coaches calling the plays, and running the offense. They've had bad drafts. They've had a lot of bad drafts. That's been one of the hallmarks of the Patriots dynasty. It's like they're doing all this stuff and their drafts are terrible, outside of a few here and there. So if this was anybody else, we would be saying this is a bad team. And that's what I think they are. They're a bad team. Like, I don't care that it's Belichick's coaching them. So what?
Yeah, and, this all goes back to our legendary sports take, right, where Belichick is just like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I don't need, like, superstar wide receivers. I'm going to get 5'10" lacrosse players. They're going to play wide receiver. I don't need to do anything the way that people do it. Now he's just upping the ante. He's like, oh, you think I can't win now? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to just have defensive coaches call the offensive plays now. We'll see how you like that. So, yeah, I feel like this is going to come back to this may bite him in the ass. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, even like Patriots fans, like I was listening to Bill Simmons, he thinks the Patriots are going to go 6-11. Like he doesn't believe in them at all. So it's just kind of like, wow, it's disturbing. Like Belichick is just kind of doing his own thing. He's got 2 of his sons on the coaching staff. He won't bring in anybody that he doesn't know. Right, he's only hiring coaches that have worked for him before that he knows. He's not trying anybody else as the offensive coordinator. They lost Josh McDaniels. They lost their offensive line coach. It's not.
To be honest, with McDaniels, like I think a quarterback like Mac Jones needs a guy like that.
Yep.
I really now. Let's be fair. Any quarterback, I think, needs a good offensive coordinator. You need a good offensive coordinator. You need a coach that's backing you up and that's, giving you weapons and other stuff and is, helping you flourish and be the best that you can be, regardless of where you are as a quarterback. But especially a guy like that, because he just can't he doesn't have the physical talent to make up for, the rest of the shortcomings on the team.
And even the Patriot,
just the talent as a quarterback or the experience. When Brady was making up for the Patriots' shortcomings, he'd already been to the Super Bowl a bunch of times and won some MVPs, and had an offense that he'd been in for several years. Like Mac Jones, like it's like a totally different. I mean, I wouldn't say totally different offense, but it's going to be a totally different thing this year compared to last year. So, and I also think that we're going to see. I think McDaniels is a legit, in terms of a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. I think he's legitimately really good, and I think you're going to see that with Derek Carr this year with the Raiders. So, I mean, I'm one of the things this year. Like, look, we'll get into what we think is going to happen with the Dolphins, but I just want the Dolphins to be better than the Patriots because they should be better than the Patriots. They have a better team than the Patriots right now.
They do. They do, so, even though their win totals are exactly the same. Both the Dolphins and the Patriots are 8.5. Somehow, I don't exactly know how that works, but it's. I think Belichick's gone a little too far this year, and he may be able to coach his way through some games, but the Patriots didn't beat any good teams last year, and the teams they did beat was like Tennessee when Derrick Henry was out,
and they tailed off at the end of the year.
Right, they didn't beat anybody. They didn't beat any playoff teams for real, and when they played, and other than beating Buffalo in that
right
ridiculous windstorm, which was just a joke. They threw the ball. They threw the ball 3 times or something like that.
Yeah,
ridiculous. All right, so does Trey Lance get replaced? Trey Lance is the quarterback for the 49ers, guys. He's in his second year. The 49ers gave up 3 draft picks to get him. Because they're Jimmy Garoppolo's not good enough. He's not good enough, and so then we thought they were going to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, but then they restructured his deal and kept him as the backup.
That's tough because they need to win games. They can't. They had the Super Bowl year where they got to the Super Bowl and then they missed the playoffs. And then they had last year. They can't do. They need to make their roster so good. They need to make the damn playoffs. So, I don't know. I have a lot of concerns about Trey Lance because he hasn't thrown the ball that much. And we talked about this, I guess it was the last podcast we did, where I was like, why did they draft this guy? He barely played. I mean, and I was saying, I was comparing it, why didn't they draft Justin Fields? Or I even said, I don't know if I said this last week, but I was like, why didn't they just draft Mac Jones? I mean, Mac Jones could have done what Jimmy Garoppolo was doing with those weapons. So, yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I think there's got to be a lot of concern about that because their roster's so good. It's like you can't be losing with that roster, no matter who your quarterback is. So we'll see because that's kind of the danger of keeping Jimmy Garoppolo there because everybody likes him. So if the other guys start struggling, it's be like, well, get this guy in here. What are we doing? And you don't want to lose the locker room, so.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I think they can, Shanahan's a good enough offensive coach. I think they can work around some of it and, make it easier for Trey Lance. But I think if after 6 weeks, he's not really showing something, they may have to, I think they may go to Jimmy G because, like you said.
Well, if they do that, then what does that say about the future?
Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, are they just out on the Trey Lance thing, right away?
No, I
think
it's
funny how patient some fans seem to be. They're like, oh, well, you can't do that. It's like, well, why is it that with some quarterbacks people are like, bail immediately, just bail on this guy, and then other ones are like, no, you got to give him more time. I don't know.
Well, and I don't even think, and I don't necessarily think they would be bailing. I think it's like you said, Clark. This isn't a team that's like a rebuilding team. They need to win. So this isn't a situation where it's like, no, we'll let Trey Lance go out there and take his lumps. They can't really do that. So that's what makes this really hard. I don't know that we've had a situation like this where a team that's good enough to win the Super Bowl is like, well, this guy's not quite good enough and given up stuff to get a quarterback to make, get a future quarterback. Normally that's not how this usually works. So right. I think it's a really interesting situation and we'll see how it goes. All right. So who are your top 3 teams in each conference?
Not in any order, but I'm going to go with the Bills in the AFC. So the Bills. Oh man,
AFC's tough.
The Bills, and then the. I don't know, the Bengals and the Ravens. I'm going to go with the Bills, the Bengals, and the Ravens.
Okay.
With the Chiefs and the Chargers. Yeah, and then with the AFC West, just, right on the outside of that.
Yeah, I'm going Buffalo, Kansas City, Cincinnati.
Okay.
I feel like obviously Buffalo to me is, they're the team with the they have the best knockout punch of any team. Like they have the highest ceiling. Like if they're playing their best, they're beating everybody, and it's not even close. But they may not like we saw last year. They didn't play their best every week. I still think the Chiefs will be very good. I think their offense will change a little bit, but I still think they're so good they can figure it out. And I think, normally the team that loses the Super Bowl has a little bit of a hangover, but I feel like the Bengals are the opposite of that. Like, it's not like the Bengals worked up to get to the Super Bowl. Like, they kind of surprised everybody by getting there last season. And I actually think they have a better team this year. They added the offensive linemen, and I feel like they got some guys on defense. Like, I think, Cincinnati may have a better regular season this year. So those are my three teams. And then the NFC, I'm going with the Rams, the Bucks, and, probably Minnesota. Honestly,
I'll take the Rams, and then I don't know, the Rams and the Packers, and the Rams, Packers,
Cowboys. Clearly,
no. Rams, Cowboys. I guess I'll put the Bucks on there. I don't. I just feel like they caught lightning in a bottle that year. Not to take anything away from them, but they kind of caught lightning in a bottle, and that year they won the Super Bowl. So, and I just don't. They're not as good as they were that year. It's tough because I just like the Packers. I have questions about the Vikings. I have questions about. The Bucks I have questions about. Even the Bucks in their own division, like they still can't seem to beat the Saints.
Right.
They struggled with them last year, and the Saints had the revolving door at quarterback. So the Eagles getting the number one seed, that's not that outlandish. And then you get the number one seed, you're playing people at home, we'll see.
I know the Vikings have become the sexy team now. But I think the Vikings have a real shot to win that division. I don't like, people acting like, oh man, the Vikings are going to be great this year. Well, the Vikings are usually pretty good. This isn't some team that's been terrible forever and all of a sudden it's a shocker that they're good. They're usually good. I don't know they're going to win 12, 13 games, but I do think they have a shot to win the NFC North this year. On the Minnesota thing, can the Minnesota own the division now?
Maybe.
Rodgers on his last year or two, so we'll see.
Yeah. I still think he just won the MVP. He's still going to be really good. Obviously, he loses some not having Devontae Adams. It's tough because that division is not that good outside of those two teams. So it's between one of those two, and so they could potentially win that. They could potentially win that division.
And as we talked about with Philly, somebody in the NFC is just going to rack up a bunch of wins.
Yeah,
because it's the conference isn't anywhere near as good as the AFC. Like there's 5, maybe 6 legit playoff teams in the NFC, and then that 7th spot is going to be completely up for grabs.
Yeah, so I was ripping on Carolina not making the playoffs, but maybe that's not that far out of the realm of possibility.
I think whoever gets that last spot is going to be gotten by some team that we're all going to be like, what?
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen. Are the Chiefs worse, and does it matter?
Yeah, they're worse. You lose Tyreek Hill. You're trying to make it to the AFC Championship game for the 5th year in a row, which is really difficult to do. They had a stretch last year where they were just not that good.
Right.
Some of that was on Mahomes. Some of that was on their defense. Is their defense any better than last year? It
kind of needs to be.
Yeah. So that's why I'm not saying that they have Mahomes, they have Andy Reid. They're a playoff team, but remember, they lost the AFC Championship game last year, and they lost the week before. Okay. It's, the Chiefs had no control over the coaches for the Bills being morons and doing what they did in the last 13 seconds of that game. So, and it's hard to stay on top like that. So, we'll see. But I mean, I don't think they're going to be as good as they've been the last few years.
But does it matter?
I think it matters enough.
Yeah.
I still think they have Mahomes. They're still really good, but I mean, people need to stop. It's like with the Patriots. They're going, oh well, I think they'll be fine. It's Belichick, whatever. It's like if this was anybody else, and it's like look, it's like, oh, they lost Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Do you understand what it's like to have a deep threat like that? When you have a quarterback who can actually get him the ball, unlike the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a lot of their offense. I'm not saying all their offense, but there were a lot of times where Mahomes would bail them out, making these unbelievable plays down the field. And they don't have that anymore. And so now it's like, Mahomes, you got to be more patient. And he's okay doing that for a little while. But then, like in the second half of the AFC Championship game, he gets a little antsy or something, and then he plays a bad half. So...
Yeah, I still think that, I still think they're going to be really good. They're not going to be ridiculous like they used to be. And we'll see, they're going to have to adapt some things, and we'll see how it goes. But I do trust Andy Reid to figure it out when he's got Patrick Mahomes. That seems like a safe bet.
Right.
Let's see. Is the hype on the Chargers legit?
You got to be careful with the Chargers. I mean...
Life advice here, folks. Be careful.
Yeah,
with the
I mean, it was just like, the thing with the Chargers. It's like they get into a close game, they lose. For years they had Phillip Rivers, and it's like, well, he's good some weeks, and then he throws some interceptions some other weeks. And then they're unproven. They didn't make the playoffs last year, and their coach, as we've discussed many times, is screwing the team over by continuing to go for it on fourth down when he does not need to go for it on fourth down. And I fully expect him to continue doing that this year. So, we'll see. Justin Herbert's really talented, and, I think he'll continue to develop and get better. But, I mean, I really have some concerns, especially if it gets into a situation where they're one of those sort of playoff bubble teams, then I just feel like it's going to come down to critical plays and critical decisions, not just by the quarterback, but by the coach in some of these games. And it's like you can't make bad decisions, because you'll screw the team over and you'll lose a game or two, and then you're not, like what happened last year. You lose a game or two, and then you're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, so, I mean, my bigger criticism of the Chargers coach is the defense needs to be better. Like, you're a defensive coach, like, dude, fix it. So that's the thing. And they got Khalil Mack and they got J.C. Jackson, so they should have a better defense. And if they get that, then that should be all that they need. But yeah, the going forward on fourth down. And by the way, it seems to be rearing its ugly head in college now. I was watching some games yesterday. It was like I think LSU went for it on the goal line, or Florida State did. Florida State was up. Yeah. They were up 7-3, and they go for it on the goal line. It's like, just kick the field goal. Like, some of these teams, like, they have no business trying to go for it on fourth down. Dude, well, we got to get no, man, just get the points. Take the points. I don't know what you're doing. So, some of this is getting.
Well, I mean, I will say that, like, Florida State still ended up they were ahead, and they still ended up being in control of the game. I'm on the fence as to whether I would have kicked a field goal or gone for it there, because I think they kicked it later, though.
Yeah,
they got down. Now, it wasn't on the goal line, but they got down there later, and then they kicked a field goal. If they had gone for it both times, it would have been like, what the hell are you doing? So, but yeah, it is a thing that's going around, and it's just like, guys, I'm not saying you can't go for it on fourth down, but there's time, it's kind of like with free speech legal cases where people are like time, place, and manner restrictions. There's a time and a place and a manner in which you can go for it on fourth down, and you need to be kind of careful. If it's not the right time, don't go for it on fourth down.
Well, as I've said, my first question about going for it on fourth down is, who are you? Right? When you're Florida State, kick the damn field goal. Like, when you're Ohio State, fine.
You're already ahead. Just kick the field goal.
Right. Right. When you're Ohio State, fine. You want to go for it? Go ahead. Because I know you're going to get another shot at it. Like, I get that, but yeah, some of this is kind of ridiculous. Do the Bengals change the Super Bowl hangover? I'm going to go first on this. I think they do. I think it's a legit team. I think they're making the playoffs again. Now, they may not go to the Super Bowl again, okay?
Yeah.
But I don't believe they're going to have a bad year because they lost the Super Bowl. I think if anything, they're going to be better because, Burrow's going to be better, hopefully they can keep him from getting beat up this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps because, hopefully they fix the offensive line and, they have a good team already. So yes, their division is tough, but I think they're better than Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So I think they're going to make the playoffs and be a contender.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. So, I put them as one of the top 3 teams in the AFC. So,
all right. So this is a tough one. Which team do you believe in more, the Colts or the Titans?
I guess I'll go with the.
I saved a tough one for last. How do I do this? I don't know.
I guess I'll go with the Colts.
You sound definitive.
Well, because it's tough. Like the Titans, they've made the playoffs 3 years in a row, and that kind of feels like, okay, the universe is going to kind of slap you back and be like, okay, you made the playoffs 3 years in a row. You're still the Tennessee Titans. Stop it. And Derrick Henry, he's obviously carried the ball a bunch the last 3 years, so I think he's got to kind of slow down a little bit, I would think. So that kind of, and they don't have A.J. Brown anymore. The Titans don't have A.J. Brown anymore.
Right.
So I think that definitely hurts Tannehill in terms of not having, weapons. The Colts still had a pretty good year last year. They just, they made some turnovers at some bad times and they played some bad games at some different times. So if they eliminate that, now granted, they don't really have great receivers, but if they kind of eliminate that, then, they could win the division. Now they can't start off slow again.
Is Matt Ryan an upgrade over Carson Wentz?
Yeah, and I also think Matt Ryan's got, I think maybe he's got something to prove this year. So there's some kind of motivation there, to stick it to Atlanta or whatever. And then with, Tannehill, there's speculation now that Tennessee should put Malik Willis in. Or, well, I guess there was because he ran around during the preseason a little bit and people are like, oh, well, I think he's the guy now. It's like, okay. But yeah, I guess I'll go with the Colts.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I like the organization structure. The Colts, I think, solid on defense, good offensive line, good running game, very similar to Tennessee, actually. And, honestly, if you just avoid some of those ridiculous mistakes that Carson Wentz made, Indianapolis would have won 11 games and been in the playoffs last year. So, they really, and they beat the Titans once and they had them beat the second time. Wentz just completely self-destructed. So, yeah. I've got to think the Colts are better, but I don't feel good about the division in general.
No, whoever wins that division, obviously you make the playoffs because you win the division. That's it. No other team from that division, I think, is making the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a tough deal. I think the Titans win total is 9.5, and the Indianapolis Colts are 9.5. So, yeah. So I thought that was a interesting one. I was just kind of looking at the divisions. All right. So those are our burning questions. You got anything that we didn't hit, Clark, before we talk about our team?
No, that was what I was going to suggest. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins.
The Miami Tamperers?
Yeah, the Miami professional football team that is a source of many headaches and great consternation in South Florida.
Yeah. Okay. So, listen, the Dolphins have tried every which way to screw everything up. The owner has basically shown himself to be a travesty. He's a disaster. And, it really, it's one of those things that really, it just kind of means it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for the Dolphins to overcome this just garbage owner that can't figure out what the hell he's doing. And we're losing draft picks and getting fined now because, he's such a moron. So, I just want to open with that, we're limited, your teams are limited by your owner, and our owner is one of the worst. Doesn't seem to have a clue what's going on. But, my overall prediction for the Dolphins, I've kind of gone back and forth, revised it a couple times. My initial thought process when, they traded for Tyreek Hill and they did all this stuff, like the Dolphins are pushing all their chips into the middle for this season. They're all in. I'm like, they're going to make the playoffs, even if they barely make it, because they have to, right? That was my whole argument. But the schedule and the numbers and the data do not back that up. Based on how difficult the AFC is, how difficult the Dolphins' schedule is, it's going to be real. I feel like it's going to be a stretch. So I feel like they're going to win about 8 or 9 games. I think 9 games at maximum. I don't know that they can get to 10. And I think, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to have a solid year. I think people are going to, all the Tua supporters, which I found out, recently, there's a whole lot of them. I think they're going to, yell and scream about how great Tua is this year, but I think it'll be a lot of smoke and mirrors.
I'm looking through their schedule right now, and I mean, there's 1, 2, 3. Let's see. I'm trying to find 4, 5, 6. 7. All right. 9 wins feels like an accomplishment.
Yeah.
With that schedule. And here's the other thing that a lot of Dolphins fans, you need to remember this, okay? I understand that the Dolphins beat the Patriots twice last year and they beat the Jets twice last year. That doesn't mean it's going to happen the next year, okay? Right. These are division rivals. They played the Jets. Both games against the Jets were close. Both games against the Patriots were close. Okay? And Tua threw a terrible interception in the first game against the Patriots last year. And if the Patriots running back didn't fumble the ball, the Patriots probably win the game. So you can't just count those as four wins right there. Okay?
Yeah. Now, and the second game they won against the Patriots, I think Tua threw for 100 yards.
Yeah. 100 yards passing, yeah. And then the other thing you got to remember is, now granted, I'm saying that the one way where you can't guarantee that we're going to win the same kind of games we won last year, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to lose the same kind of games this year that we lost last year. So there may be some games where the Dolphins win where you go, wow, I'm kind of surprised. Could they beat Baltimore or the Bengals? Possibly. And the Bills, again, I'm picking the Bills to go to the Super Bowl, but the Bills don't necessarily play their best every single week. Is it possible the Dolphins could maybe beat the Bills one of those 2 times? Maybe, because again, it's just it's the NFL, and in any given Sunday, anything can happen. So there's variability. But I just think if you even everything out, it still seems to me like an 8 or 9 win team, because I just don't see anything really elite about their team.
Right. Yeah. No, I would tend to agree with you. And honestly, so I was, thinking about this the other day. So they play New England at home, then they play at Baltimore, they play Buffalo at home, and then they play at Cincinnati. If they lose this first game to the Patriots, we could be looking at 0-4.
Yeah.
This could go badly in a hurry. Now, it could also go well in a hurry, right? But I think so there's part of me that, I definitely think the Dolphins are a better team than the Patriots and they should win more games. But part of me just thinks the Patriots have heard the whole offseason how everybody says they stink. What are you doing with your defensive coaches calling offensive plays? The Patriot beat reporters are just like, what is going on? This is terrible. So It just makes perfect sense to me the Patriots would come out in the first game and stick the middle finger to everybody and beat the Dolphins.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be. I can almost see how that goes, because if you remember last year, the first game against the Patriots, and this was a kind of a hallmark of Tua last year. First drive of the game, he comes out, drives right down the field, and either gets in that game he drove right down the field and scored a touchdown. Right, and he did that. He did that several times last year, or he would at least get some points. Now, if the first drive of the game he didn't get anything, then you knew the Dolphins were in trouble. Okay. But I can almost just see it. Like, him driving right down the field, like he throws a touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill or something, and everybody's kind of celebrating, right? And then the game just stays close because Tua doesn't get down the field that much more after that. So,
right.
I could see that happening. I could see a scenario where the Dolphins lose to like the Bears or the Lions. I could see I could see a scenario where they maybe beat the 49ers by the same token. I could see them being in a close game with the Texans. Like I'm looking at their schedule right now. It's like, I could see different things happening because they're not an elite team. They don't have anything really truly elite. They have some talent, but I just don't know,
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. Like, yes, the Dolphins have some, they have a lot of nice things going on, and they've really improved their team, and hopefully the offense will be a little bit better. But there's a few things that this team hinges on. That if it falls apart, this whole thing could fall apart. Right? Their offensive line, to me, that's the key to their whole team. If the offensive line we have a decent offensive line this year, then they have a chance. But if anything happens, if Teron Armstead gets hurt as the left tackle, and he's been getting injured the past 2 or 3 years, if anything happens to him, this could be bad. Like this could turn from, oh wow, we're a team right in the middle to we're terrible.
Yeah.
And if the thing is, if this happens in the middle of the season, it starts to go bad. Our last 6 games are at San Francisco, at the Los Angeles Chargers, at Buffalo in December, the Green Bay Packers at home, at New England on January 1st, and then we have the Jets at home. If it goes bad in the middle of the season, this thing could completely fall apart. So, I am hopeful, but I am very cautious about, what's going to happen with this. Cause like I said, this whole thing could fall apart quickly.
When is Deshaun Watson back?
He's out 11 games. So I don't think we're going to play 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. We're not going to, Deshaun won't be in the game when Cleveland plays Miami.
Okay. All right. Well, then I think they may have a shot against the Browns.
Yeah.
If Myles Garrett doesn't, just grab Tua and throw him out of the stadium. And then
right. If he doesn't grab offensive linemen and just beat Tua to death with them, we might be in trouble. But listen, and we've talked about this. Like, listen to all the Dolphin fans. Yeah, you could say we're Tua haters all you want. Listen, the truth about Tua is this. Okay, he's not unbelievable like all the Tua lovers want to tell you, and he's not terrible like all of these people who think, oh, he can't play. No, he's just not going to be elite, and he never will be. He's going to be in the middle. Like this year, if he's just a left-handed Jimmy Garoppolo, that's all we need. That's all he needs to be this year. That's what I think he is, but that's all he really needs to be. So, and I also think that this idea that the Dolphins are going to tear it up and throw the ball all over the field now, I think that's complete garbage. San Francisco's offense is successful because they run the ball from multiple formations, multiple sets. They put all kinds of guys in motion, and they fool people by running the ball creatively like they do. So I think that's what they're going to do.
I think there will be a few times throughout the season where they try to get the ball down the field purely because they have Tyreek Hill. And so I do think that there'll be times during the season where the Dolphins offense will be kind of fun. Depending on who they're playing against. But in terms of it being consistently that way, I don't really buy that because for it to be consistent like that, Tua would have to be really good, and I just don't think he's really good. So,
yeah, and listen, we saw in the Tennessee game last year what happens when Tua has to play in bad weather. It's not pretty.
Yeah,
not pretty. Quarterback with small hands trying to throw the ball in cold weather. The quarterback from Hawaii, by the way. That'll be real interesting going to Buffalo and New England in December.
I think he should be wearing gloves in those games. Kenny Pickett wears gloves on both hands, apparently. So,
well, hey, if you want gloves, maybe Teddy Bridgewater will be starting some of these games. Teddy Two Gloves.
Yeah.
I think the Dolphins are going to be okay, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And honestly, I've said this before, the general manager needs to be fired. Like, I don't know how Chris Greer still manages to have a job. he must be doing something pretty special for Stephen Ross, because there's no excuse. Like, this guy, like, completely overrated. They put all their chips, they gave up 5 draft picks for Tyreek Hill, trying to make us think that they're going to be really good this year. Like, if this blows up, the GM has got to be fired. Like, there's no way around it.
Yeah, because 5 draft, I mean, like, I don't think Tyreek Hill is worth 5 draft picks.
Yeah, it's
2 or
it's
3
insane.
maybe, but even that's pushing it because he's 28. So,
yep. All right. So before we get out of here, there was a big NBA trade that happened the other day that we need to talk about. Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz was traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers for, I think, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, I think another player.
And then 3 picks?
3 picks and 2 swaps.
Okay.
So, yeah, they basically, Utah has control of Cleveland's draft until 2029. So, yeah, big move. I mean, to me, I think this, we were hearing all this stuff about Mitchell going to the Knicks, and, the Knicks weren't able to pull it off, but I think this launches Cleveland into the top 5 or 6 seeds in the East, because they already have Mobley, who's looks like he's going to be an awesome player in his second year. They got Darius Garland. Now they have another scorer to go with them. They got Jared Allen. So defensively, I think they're going to be really good with the 2 big guys that they have. So I'm really looking forward to. They still have Karis LeVert and Kevin Love, which they may trade them at some point, but to have those guys coming off your bench that's a pretty good deal. So I think Cleveland's top 5, 6 in the conference, and they could be contenders in the coming years here. This is exactly what Cleveland needed. At the end of games, they need a guy who can get buckets, and that's exactly what Donovan Mitchell.
They're a young team, and now they've got their main young players are all under contract, and so now it's basically like the next 3 or 4 years. It's like, okay, we need to see if we can develop. These guys will develop into the core of a championship team, which they might. I mean, as a Miami Heat fan, I'm kind of like, oh, shit. I don't really see how Miami's, going to compete with that. But it's good for them. It's a good move. It's better having him there, because I think they become a championship. If he went to New York,
Yeah.
The New York people will be excited about it, but I don't think that really changes anything in the Eastern Conference. This kind of puts them on the map. So
yeah, I think it's I think in the East it's Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, and then you can talk about Brooklyn, Miami, Cleveland, whatever order you have them in. But I think Cleveland is for sure, a top 6 team, and they would have won 50 games last year if Jared Allen didn't get hurt. So they've already got a pretty good team. So, and talking to a friend of mine, Scott, I affectionately call him Scotty B. He was down on this trade from the beginning. First of all, he really wanted Mitchell to go to the Knicks, but his, he came in with the hot take that Cleveland is not going to make the playoffs, and that Donovan Mitchell is going to be an obscurity. Well, this is the funniest part was that he said Donovan Mitchell is going to be an obscurity, and I'm like, he was playing in Utah. You can't be more obscure than that. And so, but we're going to have a little friendly wager going. He said the Bulls are going to win more games. I said Cleveland's going to win more games. So that'll be an interesting side thing to say. I just think the Bulls don't have the defense. Vucevic is not a great defensive player at center, and that creates big problems when you're, if they have to play against Cleveland. And plus, I think, it doesn't even look like they're going to be healthy. I mean, Lonzo Ball hasn't even been cleared for training camp yet. So, I think this is great for Cleveland. And, LeBron had signed an extension with the Lakers, so, everybody wanted to put it out there. Will LeBron go back to Cleveland again? Everybody, all the NBA reporters are trying to put that out there, but I think he's good with the Lakers. I think he's going to stay in LA, but I'm really excited. Donovan Mitchell is one of my favorite players, and he kind of struggled last year. That whole Utah thing fell apart, So I think it's a new start for him is going to be awesome. And the other thing is I think Utah is still tearing it down. So I think Bojan Bogdanovic and Mike Conley might be on the block. So, Bogdanovic is a guy that I think could really help a team, really good scorer, not a great defensive player, but I think he could really help somebody. Conley, not so much, just because there's so many good point guards in the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody's going to be running out to get him, but I think Utah is tearing it down. I think I was reading somewhere, I think they have like 13 picks in the next 5 years, 13 first-round picks, something like that. So, they got all Minnesota's picks and they got all Cleveland's picks. But, I got to say for Utah, you probably should have traded him to the Knicks because I'd rather have Knicks draft picks than Cleveland draft picks. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I get they're tearing the whole thing down and trying to get in the sweepstakes for the name you're going to hear, next year, before next year's NBA draft. I forget what his first name is, but Wembanyama, that's his name. He plays in France, and he's probably going to be the number one pick. He's like 7'2". He's like Chet Holmgren, but even better.
Okay.
So yeah, they'll be in the sweepstakes for that. But yeah, listen, I think it's great for Cleveland. Finally a team without LeBron might actually be able to do something. Which, geez, that's a nice change for them.
Yeah. So yeah, and like I said, they got young players under contract. They got a young core there. They're set up for the next few years to try to be a contending team. So that's really all you can try to do. So they had some nice draft picks, and then they obviously traded to get Jared Allen, and now they do this for Donovan Mitchell. They're kind of set up.
Yep. All right, so NFL coming on Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have, we'll check in next weekend. We'll have a lot to talk about. We have college football, pro football. It is a content paradise for American sports.
So say goodbye to your wives until February. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, folks. Everybody take care. Remember to like, subscribe, tune in, send us a comment, send us a question, tell us why we're idiots or why we're great, one or the other. All right, boys and girls,